When we're writing code, we give a lot of different names to different things in our program so we have a way to identify them. Whether it's a variable, a method, a class, an object, we need to make concise but meaningful names to give to the different items we create. However, there are some words that we can't use when we're giving names to variables, methods, and classes. These words are reserved for a purpose, and they're called, in a rather self-explanatory way, reserved words, or keywords for short. Each reserved word has a particular meaning and it can only be used for a specific reason. For example, when we're looking at our balloon class from last time, we see some words that come up frequently like int, class, and public. These are keywords defined by Java for a specific reason. Whenever we use the word int, for example, we can only use it to store an integer variable. Whenever we use the word class, it means we're about to define a class. These words can't be used to name other things. We'll see more keywords as we move through the course and learn the different tools of programming. Whenever we make classes, variables, methods, and things like that, we need to give them names. Like we said before, we can't use keywords to name things we're creating, so we need to figure out a good naming convention for all the stuff we make. For example, in the program here, the author used the public class to basically announce that he was making a class, and then named that class Balloon. Balloon here is the programmer-defined name. Similarly, when he uses the keywords private int to declare some variable inside the class, he names them xCenter, yCenter, and radius. These are also programmer-defined names he picked himself. So how should we name things? Well, the Java naming convention is as follows. First of all the names of classes start with a capital letter. What this means is that anytime we have a class, like we do with our balloon class here, we name it starting with a capital letter. The second rule is that all names of methods and variables start with a lowercase letter. What this means is that anytime we have a method or a variable, we start the name with a lowercase letter. We can see that with the variable radius and these methods distance and move. The third rule is that if a name consists of two or more words, all words starting with the second are capitalized. This is called Camelcase, and for example, if I was writing a program to figure out what someone's student loans might be, I could name some variables like years in school, annual tuition, and interest rate. Since these are variables, things which store different values, their names start with a lowercase and then use Camelcase for the rest. In that same program, if I had a class named student loan, I'd start with an uppercase and use Camelcase throughout as well. We'll cover what classes and variables are in the next few videos, so don't worry if you can't see their difference just yet. And finally, the last rule of our naming convention is that the names of universal or important constants may use all caps and an underscore character between words. This just means that if we have variables that store constants like the value of pi, we write their names in all caps, like pi equals 3.1415 or earth underscore radius equals 3,959. These aren't variables because their values never change. They're constants. Some other things to consider is that we'll often refer to variables and methods and classes multiple times throughout our program, so we don't want really long names that just clutter the code and are a pain to type. On the flip side, we don't want super short names that are vague and cause confusion. We want something in the sort of Goldilocks zone that's concise yet self-explanatory. So, one last thing I should cover before we move on is that Java is a case-sensitive language. What that means is that uppercase and lowercase letters are treated as completely different characters in the names of any items in our code. So, for example, if I declare an integer variable named amount of cookies with a lowercase a, and another integer variable named amount of cookies with an uppercase a, these are two completely different variables. Their data isn't related at all. The important point here is that if you name a variable something like this lowercase amount of cookies, and you try and access it later in your program but you accidentally type in an uppercase amount of cookies, you'll get an error for trying to access a variable that doesn't exist. The case of the letter, so whether it's uppercase or lowercase, is very important to making unique names in Java, so we need to be cautious not to make any errors when we're writing the names of our variables. Also, you would never want to make different variables whose names differ just by a capital or a lowercase letter. So, for example, if I was making a program for people to order their suits through, I would need to store their pant size, their jacket size, and maybe their shirt size. If I wanted to, I could name three variables like lowercase size, uppercase size, and all caps size to cover the sizes of pants, jackets, and shirts. Since Java is case sensitive, those three variables are unique and they can store their own values. Syntactically, that's correct, but that's horrible style because it's just confusing. Who's going to remember that lowercase size is for pants and all caps size is for shirts? Instead, we'd want to give the sizes more specific identifiers like pant size, jacket size, and shirt size. So by now, we've covered the basics of Java syntax and style, giving you a general idea of how we're going to write our code. Next, we'll take a look at learning about classes, objects, and variables to figure out how we can start writing our own programs and put these syntax and style tools to work.